The UN Security Council last week convened a briefing on an ongoing disagreement involving Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan regarding Addis Ababa's Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD. Under an agenda item, Peace and Security in Africa, the dispute over the dam dates back to 2011, when its construction commenced. The hydroelectric structure is said to be the largest in Africa and, once filled, will reportedly double Ethiopia's power supply. Egypt and Sudan, as countries located downriver from Ethiopia, have repeatedly voiced concern that the dam is threatening their own water supply. The AU has been trying to assist in reaching an agreement between the countries. To tell us more about the UN Security Council meeting and what might be a way forward, I spoke to independent Pan-African researcher Mahlet Ayele Beyecha via Zoom from the Netherlands. Perhaps we can begin with this recent UN Security Council meeting. Is the situation between Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt that serious that the UN Security Council needs to meet about it?
Exactly. It's the right question to ask, you know. I better start with that's why actually the Minister of Water and Irrigation of Ethiopia kicked off his statement at the UN Security Council meeting by saying, perhaps I am the first Minister of Water who addressed the water development project in the Security Council meeting, because this is clearly the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is a development project. It's a hydroelectric power project, and it's not a nuclear weapon that should be dealt by the Security Council, because principally the Security Council's mandate is to ensure peace and security in the world. So but unfortunately that's what Egypt and Sudan opted to do.
Sudan says that the African Union process is great, but it needs assistance from international players like the UN, the European Union, the United States. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely not. You know, here is the reason. Because, first of all, the African Union has the mandate to deal with this, has the political capacity, and above all, it has the will to solve this issue. So Sudan, by saying that the AU has to continue to be in the negotiation or to lead in the negotiation, and then at the same time to invite other non-African states into to the table, is quite contradictory, and at the same time it's demeaning the AU-led process.
The negotiations under the auspices of the AU have been taking quite long, lots of time. What's holding them up, do you think? What's the challenges?
The challenge, it's very simple. The challenge is that Egypt and Sudan has repeatedly disrupted the meeting ever since the African Union took this negotiation under its auspices from June 2020. By then, it was under the chairmanship of the President of South Africa, President Ramaphosa, and up until now had disrupted nine times by taking it to the UNSCC, to US, to UK, to the Arab League, I mean, what not? So that's where the problem lies. And this is why it's holding the African Union, you know, not to solve the issue in the time frame that it needs to be done.
The UN Security Council has said that no party should make unilateral decisions. Ethiopia has started filling its dam already. Does that represent perhaps negotiating in bad faith?
I would say, again, absolutely not, because, you know, first of all, there are some facts that needs to be clear or on the record. Ethiopia has the right to develop itself. Ethiopia has the right to build this hydroelectric power dam on the Nile water, or as we call it, on Abai River, of course, not forgetting that the water is a transboundary river. So Ethiopia should not ask anyone's permission to fill these dams. And then also to fill the dam is, it's like a pure physics, it's a pure science. Once the dam is there and it reaches at a certain height, it will start to acquire water. So there's no way, even if Ethiopia wants to, it cannot stop filling the dam. But also we have to know that Ethiopia has reached out, and in good faith, actually, in good faith, and in the sense of regional cooperation and in the sense of regional development, has reached out and said, okay, let's develop together and be part of it. Let's build it together and let's reap the benefit of it together. But Egypt and Sudan, you know, holding to the colonial treaty, they don't want, they walked out of the Nile Basin Initiative, which actually advocates for equitable and a fair share of the Nile water amongst the 11 riparian states. And also what happened is, in the declaration of principles that the three countries signed in 2015, Ethiopia has signed also an agreement in sharing information of when it's going to be filled, how much water it's going to hold. All these are communicated between the three, and it's also in the part of the agreement that they have signed.
So let me ask you this then. Are the concerns that Egypt and Sudan have valid? And what is Ethiopia doing to allay some of these fears? Because, you know, Egypt is wholly dependent on the Nile, isn't it?
Well, that's not true. You know, that's what is circulating around in the mainstream media, but it's not true. Egypt has alternatively the groundwater, and also it has the Mediterranean Sea that it can desalinate, whereas Ethiopia don't have those resources. Of course, it's true. It has Ethiopia has rivers, but also the other rivers. 70% of Ethiopia's rivers are tributaries to the Nile River. So the only way that Ethiopia can build such big dams is on the Nile water. And also the concerns can be legitimate because Egypt refused to use its other alternatives. But all the concerns have been addressed by Ethiopia because they have signed that declaration of principles in 2015. And, you know, allaying of the fears has to do much with Egypt, has to stop disseminating false information and, you know, feeding this false information to its people that if Ethiopia ever builds a dam that, you know, all of a sudden life going to stop. That's not true. So Egypt has to wake up to the reality of the 21st century. It cannot just stuck into that colonial era saying that nobody cannot use this. It's a transboundary water. All the riparian states have equal rights to develop themselves and to use the water.
One of the areas we believe that is up for contention is the dispute resolution mechanisms that need to be applied, and also what happens during periods of drought. Is this something that Ethiopia is sensitive to and has put solutions on the table?
This is what I said before. Yeah, we have addressed Ethiopia has addressed the concerned matters, and Egypt has to use its alternative resources. But to stick to the question that you raised, if drought ever happens, drought is not in the hand of Ethiopia. If ever it happens, it's going to affect both countries. So and by the way, Egypt, with the dams that they built without consulting, with zero consultation with Ethiopia, has the capacity, the Lake Nasser has the capacity to take Egypt from 2 to 3 seasons if a drought ever happens. Egypt, when Egypt and Sudan have signed that colonial treaty or agreement, they have not consulted Ethiopia, which causes to Ethiopia a significant harm now that they are trying to say Ethiopia is causing a significant harm. Ethiopia is by generosity and innocently that they invite them, in the sense of good faith. So if there is any good faith or if anyone is concerned about acting in a good faith or anything, certainly it's not Ethiopia.
What's the story for Ethiopia about this dam? Power is something that's very important for the entire continent, and I would imagine Ethiopia is much the same. So how different will life be for Ethiopians as a result of a fully functioning GERD?
I'm glad that you asked that question. The Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam will mean to Ethiopia literally lighting the houses of or the people, for the bringing light or taking out of darkness of 65 million of its people. That's like 2/3 of the total population. And it's also to look at it, it's good to look at it from achieving the Millennium Development Goals that are now moved to the 2030. This will bring it will help it to develop economically, because when you have electricity, then you can have infrastructure, then you can build hospitals, then you can reduce child mortality, you can improve maternal health, you can bring schools right into the middle of the rural areas. All these things can be achieved. And also it will take a burden of our women and sisters and daughters who spent a lot of time in fetching water, in fetching woods for fire because they don't have electricity. So ultimately it empowers women, and also it enhances regional cooperation because it's obviously built on a transboundary water. So it will, there are countries that are in line to buy electricity from Ethiopia, neighboring countries. So in all, it will help Ethiopia to achieve those goals, but also regionally. But above all, what I want to say is the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is a flag carrier national project that has unified all Ethiopians against all the odds, against all the pressures, internal, external, that we are going through. So like 120 million of people are behind this project.
Perhaps then as a final question, I mean, the UN Security Council, a lot of people don't think that they've got an appetite to want to stay the course with this. So ultimately, probably the African Union will be the ones to carry this forward. But what is the way forward to make sure that everybody's happy and that this dam fulfills its potential?
We all have to have a phase in the African Union. We have to trust the process. Ethiopia has been all the way has been advocating, to bring this issue. First of all, according to the Declaration of Principles that they have signed, this issue has to be solved within the trilateral parties, nobody else. But when this was breached in 2019 by Egypt and the issue was taken to the US, which Ethiopia walked out after a few months process because US showed clearly partiality to Egypt, then Ethiopia said, if you insist a fourth party involvement, then we have to bring it to the African Union. That's when Prime Minister Abiy, April approached the South African president, because at the time he was the chairman. So we have to trust the process. There's no other way. We have to trust the African Union process, and the nature of the issue by itself it speaks for itself. These three countries are located in Africa. All the riparian states are located in Africa. The water is in Africa. So it's the African Union who has the mandate to solve issue. Trust the process, and also let's all parties be prudent and cautious in the information that they are disseminating and in the language that they are using. Leaders come and go, but people and countries will be there forever. So we are people, whether we like it or not, who are destined to live together. And to conclude it in the words of Dr. Seleshi Bagala, who was a representative of Ethiopia at the UNSCC, this issue cannot be solved by the mindset that created it. So African solution to African problem is a way forward.
Independent Pan-African researcher Mahlet Ayele Beyecha, thank you so much indeed for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me.